Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and welcome to the Daily Compliance News for July 31, 2023. Yes, it is the last day of July this year. And our news story begins with an article from the Sunday Washington Post. Should you use Clear or PreCheck? What's better for price and privacy? It was an interesting comparison. I'd never seen it side by side. Clear lets you go faster, but it costs more, and it requires you to provide a whole lot more in terms of biometric data. PreCheck is cheaper. Lines can be longer, is up to 5 minutes, but much less data. So it really depends on you, what you're willing to give up in terms of your private health information to the government and how much you want to spend. Next up, from the New York Times, CEOs are struggling to reassert themselves. And the Times says we are in the era of the Top Gun CEO who believe that work is war. That is certainly an interesting perspective for one to have. I guess no surprise really when you think about the number of military officers starting in the mid-90s with America's forever wars. But the question is, will that type of mentality work in the 21st century and the mid-21st century, particularly with millennials and now Gen Zers going into the workplace? Are they going to put up with the military mentality, or at least chain of command? Next up, from AlJazeera, Vietnam jails former officials and diplomats in a mass bribery trial. A Vietnamese court has handed prison sentences to 54 officials and business persons, including a former deputy prime minister, in one of the country's largest ever bribery and corruption cases. And our final story comes to us from the Wall Street Journal, Risk and Compliance Journal, Mingy Sun, reporting that the French bank BNP Paribas will settle with the SEC and CFTC probes over the use of banned messaging apps. The French bank said it had reached a proposed resolution and that they expect to pay about $137 million in fines and penalties. So the final bank, or I should say the next bank, who has gotten caught in the instant messaging app imbroglio, is now BNP Paribas. So if you've not yet been fined around your messaging apps, I would heartily wish that you would try and get a handle on it. The SEC and CFTC have made clear that they will not tolerate banks, financial institutions, brokers, or financial services companies that have messaging apps which can't be cataloged. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.